Videoyu da başlat ama. Başlat.
Hello and welcome to Britain Reimagined. What if the most feared people in history were the ones we chose to forget? And what if their only crime was being on the wrong side of power? In this episode, we bring 20 executed figures from British history back to life using AI, reviving their lost portraits, retracing their final days, and giving voice to stories silenced by the scaffold. You'll meet names like Anne Boleyn, the queen who lost her crown and her head, Thomas More, who died for his conscience, and Lady Jane Grey, the girl queen who reigned for 9 days before her tragic end. Stay with us until the final face, a life forgotten by most, but one you won't be able to forget. Number 1. Anne Boleyn was the second wife of King Henry VIII and mother of Elizabeth I. Born around 1501, her relationship with Henry VIII led to England's break with Rome when the Pope refused to annul the king's first marriage. She married Henry in 1533 and was crowned queen, giving birth to Elizabeth later that year. After failing to produce a male heir, Anne fell from favour and was executed on charges of adultery and treason at the Tower of London in 1536. Though her marriage was annulled, her daughter Elizabeth would become one of England's greatest monarchs, and Anne's role in the English Reformation left a lasting historical impact. Number 2. Mary, Queen of Scots, was the last Catholic monarch of Scotland and a central figure in 16th century European politics. Born into the Stuart dynasty, she became queen at 6 days old after her father's death. Raised in France, she married the Dauphin Francis and briefly became Queen of France. After returning to Scotland in 1561, her reign was marked by religious conflict and controversial marriages to Lord Darnley and the Earl of Bothwell. Forced to abdicate in 1567, she fled to England, seeking Elizabeth I's protection, but was imprisoned for 19 years. Accused of plotting against Elizabeth, Mary was executed at Fotheringhay Castle in 1587, becoming a Catholic martyr. Number 3. Thomas More was a Renaissance humanist, lawyer, and Lord Chancellor who became a martyr for his Catholic faith. Born in London, he studied at Oxford and became a successful lawyer before entering royal service under Henry VIII. Known for his wit, scholarship, and his work Utopia, More rose to become Lord Chancellor in 1529. However, he opposed Henry's break with Rome and refused to acknowledge the king's supremacy over the church or his marriage to Anne Boleyn. His principled stance cost him his position and freedom. After more than a year imprisoned in the Tower of London, More was executed for treason in 1535 and later canonized as a saint. Number 4. Guy Fawkes was a Catholic conspirator who became the most famous figure associated with the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. Born in Protestant Yorkshire, he converted to Catholicism and fought for Catholic Spain in the Netherlands before returning to England. He joined Robert Catesby's plot to blow up Parliament and kill King James I during the state opening on November 5th, 1605. Fawkes was discovered guarding 36 barrels of gunpowder in the cellars beneath the House of Lords on the night before the planned explosion. Arrested, tortured, and tried for treason, he was executed in January 1606. His failed plot is still kings, ruling without parliament for 11 years. His attempts to impose religious uniformity and raise taxes without parliamentary consent sparked the English Civil War in 1642. After years of conflict between royalists and parliamentarians, Charles was defeated and captured. Refusing to compromise his principles or accept limitations on royal power, he was tried for treason against his own people. On January 3rd, 1649, Charles became the first English monarch to be publicly executed, shocking Europe and establishing England as a republic. Number 6. Thomas Cromwell was Henry VIII's chief minister, who orchestrated the English Reformation and the king's break with Rome. Born into humble circumstances, he worked as a merchant and soldier before studying law and entering royal service under Henry VIII. Rising rapidly through his political acumen, Cromwell became the king's most trusted advisor and engineered the annulment of Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon. He dissolved the monasteries, transferring their wealth to the crown, and helped establish royal supremacy over the English Church. However, his arrangement of Henry's disastrous marriage to Anne of Cleves led to his downfall. Arrested on charges of treason and heresy, Cromwell was executed without trial in 1540. Number 7. Lady Jane Grey was the teenage queen who ruled England for just 9 days before losing her life to Tudor power struggles. Born into nobility and educated in Renaissance humanism, she was a brilliant scholar and devout Protestant. In 1553, her ambitious father-in-law, the Duke of Northumberland, proclaimed her queen to prevent the Catholic Mary Tudor from taking the throne. However, Mary had stronger popular support, and Jane's supporters quickly abandoned her cause. After just 9 days as queen, Jane was imprisoned in the Tower of London. Initially spared by Mary, she was executed in 1554 after her father's involvement in Wyatt's rebellion made her too dangerous to keep alive. Number 8. Catherine Howard was the 5th wife of King Henry VIII, whose youth and indiscretions led to her execution. Born into the powerful Howard family, she received little formal education and was placed in the household of her step-grandmother, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. Her relationships with Henry Manox and Frances Dereham before her marriage would later prove fatal. She caught Henry's attention while serving as a lady-in-waiting to Anne of Cleves and married the king in 1540. However, her alleged adultery with courtier Thomas Culpeper and her failure to disclose her sexual history to the king led to her downfall. Arrested and charged with treason, Catherine was executed at the Tower of London in 1542 at approximately 19 years old. Number 9. James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, was the illegitimate son of Charles II, who led a failed rebellion against his uncle, James II. Born to Lucy Walter, Charles II's mistress, he was acknowledged by his father and raised at court. Handsome, charismatic, and a skilled military commander, Monmouth became popular among Protestants who opposed the Catholic James II's succession. After Charles II's death in 1685, Monmouth landed in Dorset and declared himself the rightful king. His rebellion gathered support in the West Country, but was crushed at the Battle of Sedgemoor. Captured while fleeing, Monmouth was executed on Tower Hill in 1685. His botched execution, requiring multiple axe blows, became a symbol of the brutal suppression of Protestant dissent. Number 10. William Wallace was a Scottish knight who became a legendary figure in Scotland's struggle for independence from England. Born into minor nobility, he emerged as a leader during the First War of Scottish Independence after Edward I's conquest of Scotland. His most famous victory came at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297, where he and Andrew Moray defeated a much larger English army. Wallace was subsequently knighted and appointed Guardian of Scotland. However, his defeat at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298 ended his guardianship. After years in exile, seeking European support, Wallace was captured in 1305 and taken to London. He was executed for treason, becoming a martyr for Scottish independence and inspiring future generations of freedom fighters. Number 11. Edmund Campion was a Jesuit priest and Catholic martyr who became a symbol of religious persecution in Elizabethan England. Born in London and educated at Oxford, he was initially a promising Anglican scholar who delivered a famous oration before Queen Elizabeth I. However, his growing Catholic convictions led him to flee to Rome, where he joined the Jesuit order. In 1580, he returned to England as part of the Jesuit mission to minister to English Catholics. Despite operating in secret, he was captured in 1581 after being betrayed, tortured, and offered his life in exchange for renouncing his faith. Campion refused and was executed for treason. He was canonized as a saint in 1970. Number 12. Reginald Pole Carew was a Cornish gentleman who became involved in the Western Rebellion of 1549 and was executed for treason. Born into the prominent Carew family of Cornwall, he inherited estates and held local offices under Henry VIII. During the reign of Edward VI, religious reforms and the introduction of the new prayer book sparked unrest in the West Country. Carew became one of the leaders of the Western Rebellion, also known as the Prayer Book Rebellion, which demanded the restoration of Catholic practices and the Latin Mass. The rebellion was brutally suppressed by government forces, and Carew was captured after the Siege of Exeter. He was executed for treason in 1549, becoming one of the many casualties of Tudor religious policy. Number 13. Edward Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, was one of England's most powerful nobles whose royal blood made him a threat to Henry VIII. Born into the Stafford family, he inherited vast estates and held a claim to the throne through his descent from Edward III. Initially a favourite of Henry VIII, Buckingham's relationship with the king deteriorated as his arrogance and royal pretensions became apparent. His criticism of Henry's policies and his consultation with prophecies about the king's death aroused suspicion. In 1521, he was arrested on charges of treason, accused of plotting against the king's life. Despite his protests of innocence, Buckingham was convicted and executed, his death serving as a warning to other nobles about the dangers of opposing royal authority. Number 14. Francis Derham was a gentleman who had a sexual relationship with Catherine Howard before her marriage to Henry VIII, leading to his execution. Born into a Norfolk family, he served in the household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, where he met the young Catherine Howard. Their relationship was intense and may have constituted a pre-contract of marriage, which would have made Catherine's subsequent marriage to Henry VIII invalid. When Catherine became queen, Derham sought advancement at court and was appointed to her household. However, when Catherine's past relationships were investigated in 1541, Derham was arrested and tortured. He was executed for treason, alongside Thomas Culpeper, Catherine's alleged lover, his death part of Henry VIII's brutal response to his wife's perceived betrayal. Number 15. Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex, was Elizabeth I's favourite courtier whose ambition led to his downfall and execution. Born into nobility, he became the Queen's ward after his father's death and quickly won her favour through his charm and good looks. Essex became Elizabeth's closest companion and lover. However, his failures in Ireland and his increasing arrogance strained their relationship. In 1601, facing financial ruin and political isolation, Essex attempted a coup against Elizabeth's government. His rebellion failed immediately, and he was arrested and charged with treason. Despite Elizabeth's personal affection for him, Essex was executed in 1601, marking the end of the Elizabethan court's golden age. Number 16. Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, was one of the last members of the Plantagenet dynasty who was executed by Henry VIII for her royal blood. Born Margaret Plantagenet, she was the daughter of George, Duke of Clarence, and niece of Edward IV and Richard III. After surviving the Wars of the Roses, she was restored to favour by Henry VIII, who made her Countess of Salisbury. She served as governess to Princess Mary and became one of the most powerful women in England. However, her opposition to Henry's break with Rome and her son Reginald Pole's criticism of the king from exile made her a target. In 1541, at age 67, she was executed for treason, her death marking the end of the Plantagenet line. Number 17. Thomas Wentworth, Earl of Strafford, was Charles I's chief minister, whose authoritarian policies contributed to the outbreak of the English Civil War. Born into Yorkshire gentry, he initially opposed royal policies in Parliament, but later became one of Charles's most trusted advisors. As Lord Deputy of Ireland, he implemented harsh policies of thorough government, suppressing opposition and centralizing power. Recalled to England in 1639, he advised Charles on dealing with the Scottish Rebellion and was created Earl of Strafford. However, his unpopularity with Parliament and his role in Charles's personal rule made him a target. In 1641, Parliament impeached him for treason, and Charles reluctantly signed his death warrant. Strafford was executed, his death weakening Charles's position and hastening the slide towards civil war. Number 18. Sir Walter Raleigh was an Elizabethan courtier, explorer, and writer who fell from grace under James I and was executed for treason. Born in Devon, he became one of Elizabeth I's favourites through his wit, charm, and military service. Raleigh established the lost colony of Roanoke, popularised tobacco in England, and wrote poetry and prose. However, his secret marriage to Elizabeth Throckmorton led to his temporary imprisonment. Under James I, Raleigh was accused of plotting against the king and sentenced to death in 1603, though the sentence was suspended. After 13 years in the Tower of London, he was released to search for El Dorado, but returned empty-handed. His attack on a Spanish settlement led to his execution in 1618. Number 19. Sir William Stanley was a key figure in the Wars of the Roses, whose betrayal of Richard III at Bosworth Field helped Henry VIII win the throne. Born into a powerful Welsh family, he initially supported the Yorkist cause, but later switched sides. At the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, Stanley commanded troops that remained uncommitted until the crucial moment when he intervened on Henry Tudor's behalf, ensuring Richard III's defeat and death. Henry VII rewarded Stanley with lands and titles, making him one of the most powerful men in England. However, his involvement in the Perkin-Warbeck conspiracy, where he allegedly supported the pretender's claim to the throne, led to his downfall. Stanley was executed for treason in 1495, his death demonstrating Henry VII's determination to eliminate all threats to his reign. Number 20. St. John Fisher was the Bishop of Rochester and a Catholic martyr who was executed for opposing Henry VIII's break with Rome. Born in Yorkshire, he was educated at Cambridge and became a priest, rising to become Bishop of Rochester in 1504. Fisher was known for his scholarship, preaching, and reform efforts within the Catholic Church. He served as confessor to Lady Margaret Beaufort and was instrumental in establishing Christ's College, Cambridge. When Henry VIII sought to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, Fisher became one of the most vocal opponents of the king's actions. He refused to acknowledge Henry as supreme head of the church and was imprisoned in the Tower of London. Despite his age and poor health, Fisher was executed for treason in 1535 and was canonized as a saint in 1935. They spoke truth in courts of power. They stood firm on battlefields, in prisons, and at the edge of the scaffold. Some challenged kings, some served them. All paid a price. History buried their stories beneath dust and silence until now. Which life stirred something in you? Which forgotten name now lives in your memory? Tell us in the comments. Because to remember them is not just to honor, it's to resurrect. If their voices reached you, leave a like and subscribe so together we can uncover more lives the world left behind. At Britain Reimagined, we don't just revisit the past, we bring it back to life, one story at a time.
Welcome to Britain Reimagined. They wore crowns, walked through marble halls, and carried the weight of empires, Yet behind the pageantry were stories of sorrow, struggle, and sacrifice. Today, we bring them back, not as statues or titles, but as people. With AI, we revive the forgotten faces of Britain's royal past, those who lived in the shadow of tragedy. From Princess Diana to Prince John, these are not just royals, they are human stories. This is more than history, it's remembrance in motion.
Number 1. She wasn't meant to be a royal. Just a quiet girl from Sandringham who loved ballet and fairy tales, but the world saw a princess. At 20, she married into a dynasty and into a storm. The tiaras sparkled, but behind palace walls, she cried, isolated, scrutinized, broken by expectations. Still, she found her voice for AIDS patients, for landmine victims, for the forgotten. And the people loved her, not as a princess, but as a rebel with compassion. Then, one August night in Paris, it all ended. Too fast, too young. The world didn't just lose a royal, it lost its heartbeat. Now look into her eyes. AI brings her back, not for the tabloids, but as the woman who changed what royalty means. This is Princess Diana, as you've never seen her before.
Number 2. He never wanted the crown. Born the shy second son, George stammered through speeches and shrank from the spotlight. But when his brother abdicated, the weight of a kingdom fell on his shoulders. War came, bombs rained, and still he stood tall. He spoke slowly, bravely, his voice trembling, but unbroken. To soldiers, to citizens, he became a quiet strength in the storm. Behind palace walls, he battled illness and fear, but he never let the nation see him fall. He gave all he had, and then some. Now, through AI, we meet him not as a king, but as a man who turned doubt into courage. This is King George VI, as you've never seen him before.
Number 3. She wore a crown, but her heart broke 17 times. Queen Anne wasn't the face of a golden age. She was the mother who never heard a child call her mama. 17 pregnancies, miscarriages, stillbirths, tiny coffins, and yet she ruled. Through gout, grief, and war, she held the kingdom together. Her body was failing. Her spirit wasn't. She united England and Scotland, led during empire and rebellion. But behind palace doors, she was just Anne, a woman, alone with memories of cradles that never rocked. History remembers her reign. AI brings back her face. Now look closer. This is not just a monarch. This is a mother who mourned more than most. This is Queen Anne, as you've never seen her before.
Number 4. He wasn't born to be king, but he ruled a queen's heart. Prince Albert arrived from Germany, quiet and thoughtful, into the whirlwind of British power. At Victoria's side, he was more than a consort. He was her compass, her strength, her soulmate. He reimagined education, championed science, and built the Great Exhibition, bringing the future to Britain. But behind his ambition was a fragile man, overworked, overburdened, often unwell. One winter, the coughing wouldn't stop. At just 42, he was gone. Victoria wore black for the rest of her life. The empire mourned, but none like her. Now AI brings him back, not as the statue in Kensington, but as the man she called my dearest love. This is Prince Albert, as you've never seen him before.
Number 5.
He wasn't born to be king, but he ruled a queen's heart. Prince Albert arrived from Germany, quiet and thoughtful, into the whirlwind of British power. At Victoria's side, he was more than a consort. He was her compass, her strength, her soulmate. He reimagined education, championed science, and built the Great Exhibition, bringing the future to Britain. But behind his ambition was a fragile man, overworked, overburdened, often unwell. One winter, the coughing wouldn't stop. At just 42, he was gone. Victoria wore black for the rest of her life. The empire mourned, but none like her. Now AI brings him back, not as the statue in Kensington, but as the man she called my dearest love. This is Prince Albert as you've never seen him before.
Number 6. She became a queen when she was just 6 days old. Mary, Queen of Scots. Beautiful, bold, and born into a storm. Crowned in Scotland, raised in France, adored and betrayed in equal measure. She married for love, then for politics, then for survival. Each choice cost her. She lost husbands, lost her crown, lost her freedom. And for 19 years she waited, imprisoned by her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I. She never stopped writing, never stopped hoping. But in the end, hope wasn't enough. At 44, her neck met the axe. She died with dignity and a prayer on her lips. Now, centuries later, we meet her again, not as a traitor, not as a queen, but as a woman who refused to break. This is Mary, Queen of Scots, as you've never seen her before. Number 7. She was the future of a kingdom, young, radiant, and full of promise. Princess Charlotte, daughter of George IV, captured hearts across Britain. In a monarchy marred by scandal, she was the hope. Her wedding was a national celebration, her pregnancy a public joy. But behind the palace doors, joy turned to heartbreak. After 2 days of labor, her baby was stillborn. Hours later, Charlotte was gone too, just 21. The nation wept like never before. Shops closed, streets fell silent. Even hardened men sobbed at the loss of their English rose. Her death changed everything, paving the way for Queen Victoria. Now she returns, not just as a tragic figure, but as the young woman who carried a nation's hope. This is Princess Charlotte of Wales, as you've never seen her before.
Number 8.
He was Queen Victoria's youngest son, curious, kind, and bright beyond his years. But life had set a quiet trap. Hemophilia. A simple fall could be fatal. A cut could end it all. Still, Leopold refused to be fragile. He studied, debated, and dreamed. He challenged his limits and society's view of disability. Marriage brought him joy. A daughter brought him hope. But just months later, a slip in the French Riviera changed everything. He struck his head, bleeding inside. No way to stop it. At just 30, he was gone. His brilliance dimmed too soon. Victoria mourned deeply, writing, "My dear boy, my darling son." He returns now, not just as the sickly prince history forgot, but as a voice of resilience, defying the fate written in his blood. This is Prince Leopold, as you've never seen him before.
Number 9.
He was born into royalty, but chose a life of service, not spectacle. Prince Arthur of Connaught, grandson of Queen Victoria, wore his uniform with quiet pride. He fought in the Boer War, then again in the trenches of the Great War. But behind the medals was a man quietly battling illness and obscurity. While others chased power, Arthur healed, led, sacrificed. He served as Governor-General of South Africa, dutiful, distant, almost forgotten. His health declined, his influence faded, and when he died at just 55, few noticed. No scandal, no headlines, just silence. But here he is again, not as a name buried in the royal family tree, but as a man who showed that quiet loyalty can be its own kind of courage. This is Prince Arthur, as you'd never seen him before.
Number 10.
She was born in the shadow of a crown, but refused to live in the shadow of anyone. Princess Margaret, sister to the Queen, lived fast, loved hard, and broke every royal rule. She lit cigarettes with diamonds, danced till dawn, and loved a man the palace forbade. Her heartbreak was public, her rebellion was private. Tabloids chased her, duty restrained her, and the weight of what if never left her shoulders. Beneath the glamour, she carried loneliness. Behind the tiaras, a fragile heart. She drank too much, loved too fiercely, faded too soon. And when she died, there were no grand tribute, only silence and a flicker of scandal. But here she is now, reimagined, not as the party princess, but as a woman who lived unapologetically, even when it broke her. This is Princess Margaret as you've never seen her before.
Number 11. He was the second son, never meant for the throne, but destined for duty. Prince Alfred sailed across continents, commanding ships, shaking hands, hiding sorrow. He craved escape from palace walls, but scandal followed like a shadow. His daughter took her life. His marriage soured in silence. He smiled for portraits, saluted with pride, but behind closed doors, grief carved deep. The empire watched him, but never truly saw him. He died before he could inherit a crown he never asked for. No triumph, no legacy, just a life quietly unraveled. Now, time gives him another chance, not to reign, but to be remembered. This is Prince Alfred as you've never seen him before.
Number 12. She was born in Windsor, but never truly belonged. Deaf from birth, misunderstood, yet fiercely intelligent. Princess Alice married into Greek royalty, only to be exiled, institutionalized, and silenced. They said she was mad, but her faith said otherwise. She gave up luxury, wore a nun's habit, and sheltered Jewish families during Nazi occupation. While palaces thrived, she served in hospitals and orphanages. Even her son, Prince Philip, rarely saw the depth of her sacrifice. She died in Buckingham Palace, owning almost nothing, but leaving behind a legacy of courage wrapped in quiet humility. Now look again. This is Princess Alice, not forgotten, but finally seen.
Number 13.
Son of King George III, soldier by rank, politician by will. But behind the medals was a man surrounded by shadows, accused of scandal, whispered about in court corridors, feared more than admired. When he became King of Hanover, the cheers were faint, his past too loud. Still, he ruled with iron conviction, reshaping laws, building armies, clinging to control. But legacy doesn't always honor loyalty. His name faded, whispered less in history books, remembered more for mystery than majesty. Today, AI restores his gaze, not to glorify, but to understand. This is Prince Ernest Augustus, as history rarely dared to show him.
Number 14.
She was Queen Victoria's brightest daughter, sharp, kind, full of quiet grace. As war raged and disease crept through Europe, she didn't flinch. When diphtheria struck her household, she nursed her children herself. One died in her arms, and then she too fell ill. At just 35, her light went out on the anniversary of her son's death. History often forgets devotion without spectacle, but Alice's courage wasn't meant for applause. She chose love over safety, sacrifice over distance. AI brings her back now, not as a princess draped in titles, but as a mother, a nurse, a woman who gave everything. This is Princess Alice, as her heart always meant her to be seen.
Number 15. He was the royal who broke the mold, handsome, daring, full of life. Prince William didn't dream of thrones. He flew planes, climbed mountains, fell in love with who he wasn't supposed to. Cameras loved him, so did the people, but tradition frowned. His love was forbidden, his passions too wild for palace walls. Then came the air race, his escape, his thrill. But in a flash of fire and metal, it all ended. 30 years old, gone. No scandal, no rebellion, just a free spirit lost too soon. AI brings him back, not to mourn a prince, but to remember the man who lived on his own terms. This is Prince William, as you've never seen him before.
Number 16.
She was the youngest daughter of King George III, his joy, his sunshine. But even royalty couldn't protect her from pain. Sickly from childhood, Amelia longed for love, freedom, a life of her own. She fell for a commoner. Her father forbade it. Her heart broke in silence. As illness consumed her, she wrote letters, held tight to dreams she'd never see. When she died at just 27, the king, already fragile, shuttered completely. Some say it was her death that truly broke his mind. Today she returns not as a tragic footnote, but as the daughter whose quiet sorrow changed a monarch. This is Princess Amelia, as the soul behind the crown.
Number 17.
He was the glamorous royal, the dashing brother of a king, adored by the public, but behind the charm lived a restless soul. A war hero, a naval officer, a man of mystery, Prince George walked paths no royal dared. Rumors swirled, secret affairs, hidden struggles, whispers never spoken aloud. Then came 1942. A foggy hillside in Scotland. A military plane went down. No clear reason, no answers, just questions, sealed in silence. He became the first royal in centuries to die on active duty, and the most enigmatic. Now he returns not as a headline, but as the prince who lived too boldly to be forgotten. This is Prince George, as the enigma behind the uniform.
Number 18.
She was just 16. No crown, no ambition, just a scholar with quiet dreams. But in the storm of Tudor ambition, innocence meant nothing. Dragged into a plot she didn't seek, Jane was crowned queen, then dethroned. All in 9 days. She never ruled, she never asked to. But she paid the price for others' power. Alone in the tower, she clutched her Bible, awaiting her fate. On the morning of her execution, she whispered, "Lord, into thy hands I commend my spirit." The axe fell on a girl who never wanted a throne. History calls her the 9 Days Queen. But she was more than that. She was a child, caught in a game of kings. This is Lady Jane, as history was too cruel to remember.
Number 19.
She crossed the sea to marry a prince, expecting respect, maybe even love. But from the moment she arrived, whispers turned to war. Her husband, George IV, hated her. He humiliated her in court, banished her from palace walls. She answered with defiance, parading through streets, beloved by the people he ignored. When he tried to strip her crown, the crowds roared her name. She stood trial not for crimes, but for being inconvenient. Still, she held her head high. "I am the queen," she said, and she meant it. Denied entry to her own coronation, she died just weeks later. Her last wish, to have "Here lies Caroline, the injured queen," carved into stone. She was never silent, never compliant. This is Queen Caroline, as the crown never dared to show her.
Number 20.
She was born into royalty, Queen Victoria's granddaughter, with duty written into her blood. But Victoria Melita longed for more than titles and tradition. Her first marriage was a match of empire, not affection. She walked away from it, defying the church, the crown, and half of Europe. They called her scandalous. She called it
freedom. She married for love and found herself in another storm. War, exile, betrayal. She lost palaces, countries, even a daughter. But she never lost herself. Through revolutions and regrets, she stood tall in her truth, not a puppet of thrones, but a woman who chose her path. This is Victoria Melita, as fire-hearted as the dynasty that tried to contain her. They were heirs, consorts, and crown figures, but beneath the gold and grandeur, they were fragile, real, and deeply human. Which face lingered in your thoughts? Which story reshaped how you see royalty? Tell us below, because in remembering, we give them more than a name. We give them life again. And if there's another forgotten royal whose story deserves to be seen, let us know. At Britain Reimagined, the past isn't over. It's waiting to be reawakened, one face at a time.